Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's time for a Q&A. Q&A. You guys, I did a Q&A this week on Instagram and I have picked 5 of my top questions that you guys sent in to me, so let's get to it. Okay, first question is, did you calculate your macros during pregnancy and how many did you eat per day? So yes and no. When I first fell pregnant, I felt very, very sick. I felt like I wanted to vomit 24/7. So the last thing I was really thinking about was macros, and I was really struggling to actually get food in. So for me, I was like, well, I need to at least be eating as many calories as I was before in the first trimester. So I was just trying to get in anything I could. And all I really wanted to eat was like pizza, breads and things like that. So for the first trimester, really, it was just about getting some calories in. But then later, yes, I was focusing more on overall calories and protein. I didn't get down to being really specific in regards to macros, because I think when you're pregnant, it really is about being very flexible and going by how you feel on any given day, because you can feel great and really hungry one day and a bit crabby the next day and so forth. So rather than being really rigid and specific, I just thought, well, I'm going to calculate roughly the amount of calories I need to hit in that given day. And I would aim for a rough ballpark. But what I did was, because you need to increase your calories per trimester, rather than bumping them up a lot and gaining a lot of weight, I was just focusing on increasing my calories slowly over time to make sure that by the end of my pregnancy, my calories were high enough to what I needed. So I did calculate the amount of calories my body needed for my pregnancy, just to make sure I was as healthy as possible. But it was really loosely I wasn't tracking to a T. I was just kind of mindfully tracking and mindfully eating and slowly making sure they increased over time. So with other clients I've worked with, I have calculated their macros, but have really encouraged them just to eat towards their calorie targets as best as possible. And we were just really mindful of making sure that they were increasing their calories over time. All right, second question. This is a great question. Is a reverse the same as a bulk? So when they say reverse, they mean reverse diet, which is, for those of you who don't know, is adding in calories slowly over time to increase your metabolic rate and push your maintenance calories back up. So after a diet, you're ending your diet usually in pretty low calories. Sometimes that is your new maintenance, and that's where your body's now maintaining. So we want to push them up with a reverse diet over time. So no, it is very, very different. So bulking, let's call bulking being in a calorie surplus. So eating more calories than you're burning. And usually you would do that or be in a slight surplus if you're trying to gain some muscle and trying to make changes to your body composition. Very, very different. So for some people, after a dieting phase, for example, they might just bump their calories right up and go into a surplus or a bulk. But the problem with doing this is you potentially can gain body fat really, really quickly. Now, for some people, that doesn't really matter. For some guys, they don't really care. I know for a fact most women would freak out. So it's not really ideal always to just go from eating in a deficit or eating lower calories and then straight into a surplus, because there's a bit of an energy gap there. So for most people, a reverse diet is going to be a much more effective option, both mentally and physically, because it allows your body to increase your body will increase its metabolic rate slowly as we add calories in and we push that metabolic rate up. So it's going to help you recover from the diet. So a reverse diet is definitely much different to a bulking phase. What you might do is actually implement the reverse diet before you go into a surplus to get your body used to those calories slowly over time, rather than just throwing them in there out of nowhere and then gaining a bunch of weight. You want to maybe gain that weight slowly or mitigate as much weight gain as possible by adding those calories in with a reverse diet. Next question. How did you bounce back, inverted commas, from the baby so quickly? I don't know the rest of this question. What? Oh, I get it. How did you bounce back from the baby so quickly? According to my new mother friends, a calorie deficit is really hard or too hard. So that's where most people struggle. Yeah, well, firstly, I didn't bounce back quickly. I think a lot of people just see where I am at now, a year and a half later, or where I was actually about 10 months postpartum. That's when I probably lost the most of my weight. I didn't do it quickly. It took me 10 months to a year to really get to a body composition that I was pretty happy with. And it was really hard. It was hard to eat in a calorie deficit, and it was hard to, for me, actually get training. And that was probably the hardest part. I didn't really exercise that much, especially for the first 6 months, because I just needed to sleep. Sleep was priority for me over anything. So I think you really need to take a step back and realize that it did take time. It took a good year, and it was a very, very mild deficit and a slow process and a slow deficit. And it wasn't until the last maybe 3 months of that 10 to 12 month period where I got quite aggressive with the deficit and kind of, really tried harder. But even then it wasn't perfect and it wasn't extreme or anything like that. So it was a very, very slow process. And I'm still now, a year and a half later, in that process of trying to change my body composition. So yes, a calorie deficit is hard, but it's only really hard if you go quite extreme too soon. If you start more conservative and take it very slowly over time, it's going to be much easier and much more manageable, especially if you're dealing with a newborn and especially if it's your first child. There's a lot going on and there's a lot of things that you're trying to learn and master, and the sleep deprivation is next level. So try to be kinder to yourself, try to take it a lot slower and make sure that deficit isn't too extreme. Okay, next question. When reverse dieting, would you expect to gain much weight? Okay, so as we've mentioned before, reverse dieting is that process of restoring your metabolism again, healing your body after a diet, reversing all those adaptations that have happened during a dieting phase. So would you expect to gain much weight? Yes, expect some weight gain. It's going to happen, especially if you've been in a deficit for a long time and you've lost a lot of body fat and you're in an extreme deficit and your calories are quite low, you're gonna gain some kind of weight. For everybody, it's gonna be very different, right? It depends on your context, how long you've been dieting for, how extreme the deficit is. The list goes on. I can't even think of anything else. There's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to, are you gonna gain weight? Now for me, even for the same person, doing that reverse dieting over and over again can have a different result. So for me, the very first time I did a reverse diet, I gained quite a bit of weight because my metabolism was in such a bad place and had adapted so much to low calories that I had to really force that back up and I had to gain weight as a consequence. But of course, doing it slowly meant I mitigated that weight gain, and I probably could have gained so much more, but I didn't, which was great. And then this reverse diet I just recently did, I actually, for the first probably 8 weeks, I was losing weight. And then I'm still lower than when I finished my diet now. So it really just does depend on, one, the person and the history, but also where you are at now as a person and your history. So even for me, I'm the same person, obviously. And every reverse I've done has been a little bit different. Some I've gained weight, some I've lost weight. It really just does depend on you. So don't go into the reverse diet thinking, oh, I can't gain any weight, or I'm gonna lose weight, or I'm gonna maintain. It really just does depend on you. It depends on how aggressive the reverse diet is. And even within that reverse dieting cycle, you might gain, lose, and maintain, all in that same cycle, depending on the week of the reverse diet. So just get any weight gain or weight loss or whatever just out of your mind for reverse diet and focus on the true purpose of it. And the true purpose of it is reversing the adaptations that have happened to your body. And then later on, once you're in a great place with calories, you can focus on that deficit, and that's when you can get the weight off. Okay, last question. I love these questions, they're great. Have you ever gotten down and given up on training, and how do you get back on the wagon? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, I'm still struggling with this, to be honest. I think it happens. I think we all go through phases where you do maybe feel a little bit down, or you just get bored of what you're doing, or you just lose that overall motivation in your program or the type of exercise you're doing. I think when that happens, and it happens for me often because personally, I don't really like lifting weights very much. I find it pretty boring. I don't enjoy it unless I'm listening to like pretty crazy music and it's getting me going, or I've had a stressful day. I just go through phases. Sometimes I enjoy it, sometimes I just don't. And I think that's really normal for everybody because we all go through ups and downs like that. I think when you kind of lose motivation with exercise, I think change it up. That's when you can find something you really love to do. For me, I remember going 6 months, all I did was Muay Thai. Like that's all I did. I was just like punching things and kicking things and it felt amazing until I started losing a lot of muscle and I was like, oh, I better get back in the gym. And then I was really motivated to do that. So that was just one example from me, but for you, it might be adding in other things you love. Some people love to do dance classes or I don't know, go do pole dancing or go do CrossFit, whatever. Anything that you find that you really enjoy doing, that's activity that gets you moving, start adding more of that in, and then later you can kind of find a balance between resistance training and then getting active with the things that you love. But remember, really, exercise should be enjoyable. So if you're doing something that's just mundane and boring and you just don't like at the time, even if it's a phase that you're going through and you just don't like it right now, change it. It doesn't matter. Get moving. That's all that really matters. And then later you can change things up to get back to your goals. Thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. If you have any questions yourself, please drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you and I love giving you guys feedback and answering any questions that you have. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any videos that come through. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.